My name is Lou Celender. I was born in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania on May 5th, 1929. And I grew up there in a little town outside of Pittsburgh called Sharpsburg. Went to a Catholic grade school and high school there. In May of 1951, I got a notice from the draft board saying that the government wanted me to join the Army. So I was told to report to 2,000 hours to a train station in downtown Pittsburgh. I didn't know what 2,000 hours meant. Somebody told me that that was 8 o'clock in the evening, so I reported there and was transported to, overnight, it took us to get to Fort Meade, Maryland, which was the Army Replacement Depot. And there I was issued all the uniform and all the paraphernalia that you need to get through basic training. Okay, we left Fort Meade and went to, on a train to Camp Breckenridge, Kentucky, and we spent the next 16 weeks in basic training. And after the basic training, we all received assignments. Some of the guys were assigned to Germany, some were assigned to Far Eastern Command. Well, we knew that meant Korea. And so after a short delay en route, I went out to California, to Camp Stoneman, which was our departure port, departure base. And we left from there and sailed out from San Francisco. Well, we flew out to Camp Stoneman, California on a commercial airline. And then from there, we got on a ship and we were sent to Yokohama, Japan. And from there, we were taken by bus to Camp Drake in Tokyo. There we got our assignments, and that was when I was assigned to go to Korea. This happened all in the month of December of 1951. From there, we got on board another troop ship, and we landed in Incheon, and we had to take landing barges because the Incheon harbor was too shallow for the ship to come in. We got off the landing barges, walked through the city of Incheon, and we got on a train. From that train, we went to Chuncheon, which was 7th Division headquarters. From 7th Division headquarters, I was assigned to the 17th Regimental Combat Team, and I was put on a truck with a bunch of other soldiers, and we were taken to our respective companies. We were taken up to the bottom of the punch bowl, and one of the sergeants there asked me if I had ever heard of the punch bowl, and I said, no, I never had. He said, well, you will. And so the next day, they took me up in a Jeep to the bottom of the hill. The rest of the time, we had to climb to the top, which is where our position was, and I got to the top, and it was so steep up there that you actually had to use a rope to pull yourself up. It was almost like mountain climbing. We got to the top, and this was Hill 1243, by the way, 1,243 meters above sea level. And they put me in the machine gun position, and they told me that was going to be my home for the next several weeks. Anyhow, it was very cold. It was icy. I was assigned to Company H, which is a heavy weapons company in the 2nd Battalion of the 17th RCT. And when we got up to the top there, it was all covered with snow, and it was very cold, I remember. And because we were going to be on the forward slope facing Manchuria, and the winds were coming down, and it was right about the 3rd week in December. And so I was given my position at the machine gun, and also my bed was going to be, or my bunk area was going to be right beside the machine gun position, because there was no other place to put me. So I had to sleep in that elongated hole for the next 3 weeks, and it was what was so funny about it was that there was a rock sticking out in the middle of it, and I had to sleep with that rock in my waist. So I had to sleep on my right side, bent around the rock, and that was very uncomfortable, but that only lasted 3 weeks. Okay, the biggest problem we had was with artillery and mortar, because we were pretty far away from the other hill, which is where the Chinese were located. But one night, and it was just, I think it was about Christmas Eve, and I was in my position, I was trying to get some sleep beside the machine gun. All of a sudden, the gun started firing, and the empty shell casings were hitting me on the head. And what the heck was going on? So I'm asking the gunner and the assistant gunner, what's going on? And they said a Chinese group, I don't know how large the group was, probably a platoon size, were coming up the hill, and they were repelling them with a machine gun fire. That was, after that, they returned, and so the machine gunners quit firing, and then I was able to get some sleep after that. Later on, the biggest thing we had to worry about, as I said, was artillery and mortar shells. I remember one time when I had to relieve myself, and all they had for this purpose was a ditch dug, and you had to put one foot on each side of the ditch and do what you had to do. And at that time, one of the mortar rounds came in and landed right near the ditch. And I jumped out of there so fast and jumped into the bunker that everybody was laughing at me. And I said, well, I know it's dirty, but better dirty than missing. The machine gunner's duty on the MLR was to cover a certain arc of space. And the next position, machine gun, and the next squad was to cover the next position of the next arc of space, and so on down the line, so that we would have the entire area covered with machine gun fire. And that was how we set up, and that's how we operated. We had a large bunker there, and one time it would hold about 15 people, and the Catholic chaplain came up to say Mass on Sunday. And he said Mass right in that bunker. And fortunately, it was short, because as soon as we all got out of there, about 5 minutes later, a 76 millimeter round hit that bunker. Had that not been a short service, we would have all been killed. And I always say thank God for short sermons. We were up there about 3 weeks in the Punch Bowl, and then we were taken back to go into reserve. And we all were very happy that we finally got a shower, which we hadn't had in about 3 or 4 weeks. And then after being in the reserve for several weeks, we were sent over to Huachan. Now, Huachan was a flat area where we were, at least, and our machine gun position was actually situated under the railroad tracks. We had sandbags put over the top of the railroad tracks, and we were underneath the railroad tracks, and that was our machine gun position. Fortunately, the 2nd Division, whom we relieved, had very good bunkers for us, and we had a lot of nice bunkers to stay in at that time. Later on, we were sent to the Iron Triangle area, and we were told we were going to take a hill. I think it was Hill 1052, because that was kind of the biggest, highest area around there. And so we were going to be taking that hill in the next morning. Now, this was sometime early spring. And I was very nervous, because at that time I had got a job as a radio operator for the commanding officer. And I could picture myself going up that hill, carrying that radio on my back, and being shot at. But anyhow, what happened, the morning of the attack, we were told that we weren't going to do it, that the 3rd Battalion was going to do it. So we were going to take this hill, and then they assigned it to the 3rd Division. They assigned it to the 3rd Battalion, because this was done for security reasons. So the Chinese thought we were going to come in from one direction, we were going to come in from another direction where the 3rd Battalion was. Well, anyhow, so I escaped that one, but they put me at the forward aid station, me and another guy. And whenever the 2 men would come back on a Jeep, the stretchers they put on a Jeep and brought them back, and what happened was me and the other guy, we had to go and set off thermite grenades, phosphorus grenades, so that the MASH helicopters could land and pick up the wounded. And I counted 85 wounded that day, and it made me more happy that I didn't get chosen to take that hill. But I don't know how many of those men died and how many survived, but we know we counted 85 of them. In a heavy weapons company, there are 3 platoons. There's 81 millimeter mortar, 75 millimeter recoilless rifle, and 30 caliber heavy machine guns. And I was assigned to the machine gun platoon, because that was kind of an initiation thing. Everybody got that when they first went in, although we were trained on all the equipment. I got the job of radio operator because I noticed they didn't have one in our platoon, and I asked if I could get the job, and they said yes, I could. And I said okay, and I took the job, and I asked them why they didn't have a gunner, and they said, I asked them why they didn't have a radio operator, and they said because he was killed because he had to sit out the entrance of the bunker so that he could put the antenna outside, and that's how he got killed. So I didn't feel too happy about that. But later on, being a radio operator, I went into the commo section, which was in headquarters platoon, and I got to be the radio operator for the commanding officer. I spent the next the rest of the time in Korea as his radio operator, and also as a repairman for EEA telephone lines, which were all over the place. We had a telephone line that went from a small switchboard we had to each platoon, and we had one also to battalion headquarters. And so every once in a while, mortar shells would come in, or artillery shells, and would blow up our lines. We would have to go out, and with a telephone, we'd have to troubleshoot and find out where the break was, and then we would repair the lines. One time we had one was going out to the OPLR, which is in front of the MLR, main line of resistance, and we had to go out and repair that line. And we went out there in a Jeep, and the two of us and the Jeep driver, and the two of us went out to repair the line. We told the Jeep driver to stay there, and he said, no, he said, I'm not staying here by myself. And we kind of laughed, and we all went together, and we got the repair done, and we got out of there as fast as we could. We were somewhere in the area of Watch on an Iron Triangle, and again, I was out there replacing lines that had been torn up. Some of the lines were actually torn up by our own tanks, our phone lines, but so I put some of them up in a tree to get them up off the ground. And I was up in the tree, and all of a sudden I heard what sounded like a bullet whizzing past me. And my friend on the ground, he said, they're shooting at you. And I said, they are. So I jumped out of that tree, light on the ground. And there was just as I jumped out of the tree, another round came through. But I was lucky. I missed both of them. One time during the monsoon season, we had a lot of rain. And one of the rivers that was normally just a stream turned into a great big river. And we had to go out and repair a line, a phone line on that river that went across it. And I was standing at the shore, and I followed the line into the water, and I went into the water up to about my knees. And I had dropped the tools that I was using to repair the line, and I reached down in the water to pick it up, and I touched three prongs, which was the set-off device for a landmine, and I was standing right over it, and I didn't realize it. And I told one of my buddies on shore, I said, I'm standing on a landmine. He said, well, then you better get out of there. So I turned around and got back to shore like I was walking on eggs. Yeah, that was written up in the Stars and Stripes. After I'd been in Korea about 11 months, I had 34 points, and that was the number of points you needed to rotate. You got so many points for each time on line, and other points for lesser points from being in reserve. So it was in November of 1952, and I was on the switchboard that day, and I got a call from headquarters, and they said that there are 12 or 13 replacements coming in, and I knew that I was 13th in line in our battalion to be replaced. And I said, please let me know if it's 12 or 13, because if it's 12, I don't get to go. If it's 13, I get to go. So they said, okay. We checked it further, and it's 13. And I said, hallelujah. So I was very happy, and I went back to company headquarters, got all my gear together, and prepared to rotate back home. All 13 of us who were rotating were called by the battalion commander, who was a major at the time, and he stood us at attention, saluted us, and thanked us for having served our country and for having served the Army. Okay, we were sent from Korea to Sasebo, Japan, and the reason we were there was until we got enough men to fill a troop ship. We filled a troop ship, and we sailed from Sasebo, Japan to Seattle, Washington. And when we pulled into Seattle, Washington, we were aboard the Marine Phoenix. When we pulled into Seattle, Washington, they had a big sign, "Welcome home, Defenders of Freedom," and a picture of all the logos and all the insignias of every division that was in Korea. We thought that was really a nice welcome for us.